This podcast is powered by Pelotonia. To learn more about our goal to end cancer, visit Pelotonia.org or see the link in the episode notes.
How did you come to hear about Pelotonia, Brendan, and get this whole thing started?
So I worked at Ohio State. There was an organizational meeting in the spring, and then Tom Lennox was there talking. And I told him, hey, there was that little bike event I'd done in New Albany called the A&M Challenge. He goes, oh, I started that. I said, and you're doing Pelotonia? I'm in. So I was watching the movie The Rookie. They focus in on the team in the high school, a picture of the team in the high school trophy case in this little town in Texas. And the camera just goes in on the team. And then right above the back of the players, the scoreboard of the high school baseball team says Bo's Tire Barn. It's like an ad. And I thought, oh, that's it. This will be the name of our team.
Of course.
And so, yeah, everyone looks at us like, Bo's what?
Welcome to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia. We're a community that's dedicated to funding life-saving cancer research through a 3-day experience of cycling and volunteerism. I'm your host and ride community manager, Jill Lendino. Your journey with us to the finish line begins now. Through research, we will see an end to cancer. Thankfully, every single penny raised through our riders, virtual riders, and volunteers goes directly towards the solution. This is made possible by our major funding partners, the L. Burns Foundation, Huntington, the American Electric Power Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. It's because of them, all of our partners, and this dedicated community that all of this is possible. Bo's Tire Barn has some seriously impressive accolades to list. They've raised over $1.3 million. They were one of the first Pelotons to join the Pelotonia movement back in 2009. And they attract nearly 40 members to their team annually, many of which who have been riding since the very first year. So what started as a group of guys raising funds for cancer research has grown into a group of friends with families who have grown incredibly close, due largely in part to their involvement with Pelotonia. 4 of their founders are Dave Bowers, Brendan Flaherty, Scott Siebenaller, and Sean McGrath. One morning, we gathered a handful of chairs, sat in a circle with a mic, and shared stories of their time together. Even one about how one member may be alive today in part to their involvement in Pelotonia. But all of this started because of Brendan's idea to get involved in the first place. But did any of them have riding experience to start with? Let's start there in this episode, Bo's Tire Barn.
So you get the group together, you start talking about let's do this. Did anybody have riding experience?
Nothing very extensive, because I started in 2002 with just a used bike.
Yeah.
I was just like Dave was before he started, just out of shape, dad.
Yeah.
And I needed to do something.
Okay.
So that was it. And then a few years later, I got Sean. I needed someone to ride with.
Sean, what did you think when he brought this idea to you?
It was kind of a no-brainer. He's like, hey, we got to do this. And my dad had passed away from cancer in 2005, so it was still, a raw memory. So that was a no-brainer. 180 miles didn't seem like the best idea, but it seemed like a worthwhile cause. So we went for it.
If we think back to that first year when we're all, fairly new to riding, it's the first year for Bo's, it's this event that most people haven't heard of. Maybe they just heard about Lance Armstrong. What did you guys think of that first ride? I mean, tell us about that day.
Actually, it started the night before because I think it was Counting Crows or who performed, and there was a massive rainstorm that came through. But the anxiety set in then because, as these guys had said, I started in April, I believe, riding a bike to Granville. And 4 months later, here I was about to embark on a journey that I had no idea how physically demanding it was going to be. And I would say there's a photo of the 4 of us in our white Bo's Tire Barn t-shirt. We all look.
We had t-shirts.
Yeah, and tennis shoes and toe clips, and we're riding steel bikes and mountain bikes, and I had a city bike. So it was quite an adventure. But going through the physical pain, and it was painful riding 100 miles for the first time ever. I would say when I was hooked was probably the first 2 miles in, because at the time you started chemical abstracts and then you went right by the James, and there were people. I remember lines, streets, patients, doctors, nurses. and it was just so moving. It was at that point it's like, okay, I can do this. Look what they're going through. It was such a moving experience that close into starting, that it motivated you. In addition to, I wanted to catch Lance Armstrong, which I think when Dave and I finished that first day in Athens, I think Lance was probably already back in Austin, Texas.
You're right.
Yeah, because it was a long day, but it was well worth it.
Yeah, I think that because it used to go to Athens, and that first 85 miles, you're going through the hills of Hocking Hills and stuff. We were very fortunate that the last 15 was on a bike path going into Athens, because some of the pictures of us there at that last stop, we're sitting on bags of ice, we're like laying on the ground. I mean, really, it was a struggle to get there. And the thought that kept going through my head, and I'm sure these guys, was we have to do another 80 miles tomorrow.
You just signed up for the full thing.
When Brendan said, hey, we're going to do this Pelotonia, we looked at the distances and we thought, oh, it's in Athens. This will be awesome. We'll just go the 100 miles, and then they're going to have a beer truck there. It'll be cool. We can have somebody drive us home. That'll be great. And then as you start training and doing things and learning more about what's going on, we're like, we got to do the whole thing.
I think the funny thing about when we started riding long distances is Brendan literally would have a map, a piece of paper with the pencil of what roads we had to turn on, and we'd stop. And it was like, little did we know, I think that year, that we were so close to Reynolds Hill. I think we had turned down Weaver or some of the Riley.
Was
yeah. But we didn't know, because we're following Brendan's scratch pad with some roads on it. I remember that vividly. He was
looking up on Google Maps at work, and hey, here's.
No, when he printed, he brought it with pencil. Yeah, he would etch it out.
Yeah, that was before Google.
Yeah.
That
was hilarious.
How far you've come.
It was quite an experience. I mean, the first 100 miles, again, to Dave's point, it was very painful. And the thing that I could remember is, I can't get on my bike tomorrow. It's like there's no physical way. And I know Sean will attest to this. It was probably the worst night's sleep he has ever had, as far as just the funny things that were happening.
We were at the dorm room, right at the
Convo Center.
The Convo Center. Yeah. So there were 4 of us in a room, right?
So when you got done with the ride that first year, who was waiting at the finish line, or what do you remember seeing when you pulled in?
All our families were there. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I would say remembering the families, as Dave pointed out, but if you think about how long we've been involved in this, I mean, my daughter is 21, so half of her life she has known our group, Bo's Tire Barn. I mean, it's amazing how our kids, our families, obviously from the support as far as allowing us to ride, and how the kids are involved. I mean, it's just become part of our life. And I couldn't imagine, I couldn't imagine doing that every year 10 years ago, and now I couldn't imagine not doing it.
It definitely changed the second year, because the second year was like, man, last year was hard. It was hard to raise money. It was hard. But at some point during the second year, I don't know exactly what happened, but it's almost like a light bulb went off, and it became more than, hey, we're going to ride 180 miles. We sort of figured out how to raise money. We figured out, then it was more like, wow, look at, it became more of, we are impacting people that have cancer, the families. I think it was year 2. There at the finish line, there was a family. I think the dad had gotten done riding, and he was embraced by his wife. She had a bandana on. So, and I mean, they were just sobbing, just absolutely like pouring out everything. And so there's things like that happen that you just really get touched and affected. And like, yeah, how can we do more?
Sharpies written, names written on their backs of their legs, on their jerseys, and and the one cool thing too is that you see most everyone has their name on the back of their bike. their ID tag is on the back. So as you're coming up past someone or they're coming up past you, you can see their name. So a lot of people, when you're on a tough spot or whatever, people are just encouraging each other out there, and you see where they're from, you can see what city they're from, and it's just one more thing on the road that you're just like, oh yeah, do you know so and so? You talk to somebody for maybe a couple, 3-4 minutes, and then off somewhere else. But our team's so big now, we've got probably 6 to 8 guys riding together, almost different groups all through.
Ever a time that morning, that Sunday, where you guys looked at each other like, are we really doing this?
Every minute of the first 10 miles. After the first 10 miles, then you kind of settle in, and the pain is kind of settled in, and you kind of just go. I mean, it's just one of those. I mean, it's really an endurance thing. I mean, that's really the mindset you have to be. Is like, hey, you're just going to finish. You're going to finish, and keep turning the pedals. You see all the jerseys. People have different things on their jerseys to exactly that. Keep on pedaling, and so that's what we were doing.
But I think the toughest finish was the second year when the beer truck was still stuck in the mud at Athens.
Oh, I've heard about
that. Was brutal. That was a real letdown.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, I think the first point is that in the second year, we were able to get a corporate sponsor. That was Third Sun Solar out of Athens, Ohio. And they sponsored us for 4 or 5 years. I think their revenue was $20 or $30 million at the time, and they were giving us $5,000 for jerseys, and then the rest was going into team contributions. So that was really cool, and that really gave us, additional identity. Right? It was Bo's Tire Barn, powered by Third Sun Solar, and with that success, then we were able to attract the attention of a foundation, which then gave us more funds to be able to help new riders, with their fundraising. So that really helped us take off.
Yeah, we have a local bike shop, Velo Science in New Albany, that donates a bike to us. We at a reduced cost, and we sell raffle tickets for that, and that's been a good fundraiser.
Mike Behrend hosts a wine party at his house. It's invite only, but anyway, so for $500 donation, Mike has got these wines from really they're from France, in California. It is absolutely over the top amazing. Mike lives in a renovated part of the city of Indianapolis, kind of close to their downtown north side, and it is just a fantastic event and a great idea. I think Mike raised $15,000 himself last year, and his son Zach ends up with $5,000. So he shares it with his whole family. I mean, they must raise $25,000 themselves.
And he is generous to donate the wine, so all the profits can come back, which is just incredible.
He is another. There's so many people on our team that I just call them secret weapons that do things. Mm-hmm. So I had a few ideas to raise money. In fact, the 3 ideas I had to raise money, none of them worked. And a lot of the events we do are fun, and we have a good time, which I think helps the team keep going year after year. I mean, we look forward to seeing each other. But there's other unsung people that are doing things. So we have a golf outing, and Joe's really tight with Bill Lay. So Bill started our golf outing. But Joe will buy all the food for the golfers afterwards, and not even make a big thing of it. I don't know. It's more than $1,000 every year, and it just takes care of it. Bill says that Joe took care of it, but he doesn't get any special notoriety. But we know he's just another one of the guys. Mike's brother Keith, of course, Keith Behrend. He's very generous with the things he comes up with and donates for our golf outing. Just another unsung guy on our team.
Certainly, I think without Pelotonia, we wouldn't be as close. That's, I think, for sure. Because there are friends that I have that are not in Pelotonia that I don't see as often. But these guys, you spend hours and hours training, riding. We talk about everything for hours and hours and hours. So we know a lot about one another. So that's easy to pick on somebody one. But there's also, there's a underlying little bit of competition. There's a hill coming up, or there's this or whatever. We're always comparing notes on what'd you do this time, what are you doing, and just training wise, trying to somebody bought something new for their bike, or they've got new wheels, new frame,
or they got a new bike,
a new bike. Yeah. So our equipment has improved over the years, and from that first year, what we were riding and what we were wearing, I think we can call ourselves cyclists now.
The thing about bikers and just our group and then the other people that we meet, there's something about bike riders that they get when you're out riding and you're not feeling quite where one of your friends will pull a draft for you. And some days they're pulling a draft a long time compared to the amount of time that I'm pulling a draft. So you pick up on that. And then there's other days where you got to pick up the slack. But I would compare that to I like the people that bike. I used to golf a lot more, and I like golf. But you don't have that sort of camaraderie in golf that you do in bike riding, where you help each other out. And it's something that it's not just the bike riding. You're helping each other out.
One of the members of Bo's Tire Barn is a cycling prodigy. His name is Zach Behrend, and he's been participating since 2014 when he first started riding at 14 years old. Zach has become an absolutely dynamic cyclist, and although Pelotonia is a ride and not a race, he finishes every year within the first 10 riders. It's absolutely incredible that he's been able to cultivate a love for cycling alongside his dad and his uncle and his brothers and sisters, and he's raised over $37,000 for cancer research.
So Zach, I sent him an email, it's 5-6 years ago. So the first year, I never saw Zach. I don't know what he did. Maybe he did 20 miles with his dad, and his dad finished. The second year, I had a hard time. Like, he was like near me, and I was having a hard time keeping up with him. The third year, I mean, forget it. He was one of the fastest things I'd ever seen on a bike. And then he's just taken off from there. So, yeah, he's a competitive cyclist now he was on the Southeast United States under 18 team. He competed for that group in Canada at a big tour event late last summer. So, yeah, he's incredible. It's fun. I've been over to watch him do a cyclocross race through the woods and dirt and
Grandview.
Yeah,
we saw him at that. What is that race?
It's a Criterium or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did that race, and but yeah, he's just
and
it was literally 3 or 4 days after he got his wisdom teeth out, and we're like, what are you doing? Yeah. And it was amazing.
Can you talk maybe more about how some of your other kids on the team have gotten involved with Pelotonia? Your kids, Scott, come to mind.
Yeah. So my daughter is she's a junior currently at OSU in retail. And last year I told her, look, you need to get an internship. You can't just work at the local pizza shop. You need to do something that help you pursue your career in fashion and retail. So I couldn't get her on an express. I don't know why. I didn't have enough pull there, I guess. But then there was a conversation about an opportunity at the Pelotonia office in their marketing and merchandising, and she got accepted. Had what I would say would be just a fantastic experience working there last year and just learning so much, not just from T-shirts, hats, buying the right quantities, what's the ticket, how do you merchandise this on the website, what space do you use in the retail shop that you had in your office. But it was really about the nonprofit piece and just the community and the organization, how much Pelotonia means to Central Ohio and Ohio and the nation, quite honestly. So she is going to ride this year on Team Express, but she is all in. For sure.
Hey, speaking of Scott and Express and Pull, Scott leads the Express team. So you've got a tremendous amount of funds next to your name, Scott.
Yeah. Yeah. So, stepping outside your comfort zone, and, we started this in 2009, and then 2012, Express started a Peloton with Becca Kist. She was kind of a leader, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, can you help me?" And I said, "I can help you." I kind of asked these guys for some advice. I said, I work there, it's been, I've been there 20 years. And I was like, what do I do? I want to be on Bose. And these guys were like, look, you can support Express and still be on Bose. So that's what I did for the first 4 years. And then lo and behold, an opportunity came for me to lead Express 2 years ago. So yeah, being the captain and being put in that position to lead a group of, there's about 120 people that join riding, volunteering, or virtual riding has been quite an experience. And to get up in front of the company and push the passion project that I have and see so many people really take hold. It's been quite an experience. And to your point, Sean, Express has been involved since 2012. So we've raised $1.6 million.
My mother and father-in-law, Dan and Cecilia Carmichael, they've been the Carmichael Foundation that was helping to match some of our funds early on, and have continued throughout the 10 plus years we've been doing this. They live half the year in Florida, and my mother-in-law had breast cancer, was treated at the Mayo, and so they've become very close with the Mayo Clinic and made donations there as well. But the Mayo knows about Pelotonia, and they were asking them, like, what is this? How did they do this? They are trying to figure out, like, how did this come about? And they were like, well, I don't know. You can talk to my son-in-law about it. And it's like, well, no, you have to come experience. I don't think it's something that if you're not familiar with it, you have to come here and see how it's happened. But, Tom Lennox for sure, and, Dr. Caligiuri, I think spearheaded that originally, that really created the atmosphere that still exists today. And then they've just grown on it. And now with Doug in charge, I mean, he's awesome. I mean, he's been very supportive of Bose, and we see him at different places. Like, hey, I don't know how he remembers everybody, but he does. But it's great.
There's a lot of guys on Bose that swore they would never jump on a bike, and now they are diehards, and I think they're a lot healthier as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, our community. Oh, it's when you look at the Columbus community, it's absolutely incredible. Look how much money Pelotonia's raised.
It went from 10,000 that first year, struggling to make 10, to the last couple years we've made. It's like 200,000 last year, right?
Last year we went over 200,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 1,300,000 for the 10 years.
But yeah, I think that first year, though, as he mentioned, it was one of these, we thought, oh, we'll do this, and you're 5 miles in or very early on, and you realize this is so much more than a bike ride.
Yeah, we, outside of riding, May or April through August or September, we have grown close. The four of us, we spent a lot of time together in the saddle, as Davis said, but we try to get together, our families, our wives, in February, whenever that is, have a dinner, have a lot of laughs. We went to Michigan with Mike Behrend and Keith, and had great times there riding. We've been to Colorado a couple times. We were at Cape last year, so we've really just, it's now part of us, and it's brought us together as a family, and that's how I kind of think of these guys right now. I want to add too, just from a support standpoint, it's not just these little towns, but I know our wives, our family have given us time, allowed us to train, but then they have also, at the top of Reynolds Hill now, it's Dave's, it's our wives, some of our kids, Dave's parents are there, and it's just, it is infused, it's now in the fabric of our family, and it's an event. Again, don't schedule anything the first week of August, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our wives literally allowing us to go off on this crazy journey that I thought, was probably the dumbest thing I'd ever wanted to do, ride 100 miles and then 108 is just...
Well, we're grateful for them and for you guys. So thank you so much for spending time with us today and for everything you've done.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
In 2017, there was one member missing from the Bose Tire Barn Peloton. Scott wasn't riding that year. In fact, he was in the stands cheering on his son Michael, who ceremoniously rode in his place through the final stretch of the ride. A few months earlier, Scott's life took a sudden and life-threatening turn, and he later learned how training for Pelotonia likely saved his life. After that initial interview, Scott and his son stopped by the studio and detailed how that moment brought them and their Peloton closer than ever before.
In 2017, I was training for the ride, and then I was off that week of work, and Michael, which we rarely do, we said, hey, let's sit down this week. He wanted to watch Band of Brothers. So finally Wednesday, I was going to chill out, and I ran a couple errands in the morning, no big deal. And then around 1 o'clock, we finally started the episode. And I think it was like 1:30, 1:35. I was sitting on the couch. He was on the sofa next to me. And I threw my glasses down watching the show. And that was the last thing I remember. I don't remember anything until the following day, which would have been the 29th of June, around 4 o'clock is when I woke up.
What freaked me out, of course, but the first thing that came to my mind was like, I need a phone because you got to call the cops, basically. The paramedic there told me just to put him on the ground. And I remember trying to like pull him on the ground and he was too heavy, so I basically dropped him. I was like, oh, sorry, Dad, but you couldn't hear me.
I don't remember.
And then they told me, like, count to 4, and as you do 4, you're going to do compressions. And I was like, okay.
The ironic thing about it was my wife and I were having a conversation about getting rid of our landline. That's what he used to call 911, which when you use a landline, obviously they know where you're calling from immediately. So, it saved seconds, if not minutes.
People that were there that responded to the call, they thought that he was gone too the moment they walked in. And so I think just to see it come out is like cool.
So I told you my right coronary is 100% blocked, but the left descending has created these ancillary arteries and pathways to make the right side of my heart work because I am fit and because I was cycling so much. While my heart and the arteries, there's issues, it also probably saved my life as well. There's probably divine intervention. Obviously, the day before I rode 90 miles, but I rode 90 miles by myself. Like I went out to Black Hand Gorge and back anywhere along that route. Honestly, any other situation where help wasn't readily available and the reaction wasn't within, I don't know, Michael, what do you say? Probably I was on the AED within 5 minutes. And I mean, he administered CPR within 2 minutes. So that's those circumstances where I was with him. Again, there was divine intervention on why I'm sitting here. I have to believe that. And this was actually before, it probably was a couple weeks before we talked about Michael riding in the event in some form or fashion.
And so they're pulling me in front and they were like, yeah, just watch out for this gravel here. And here's where I learned, like, you got to yell gravel and all the ins and outs to biking in a group. And so we go around, we're probably around New Albany Square, I'd say. So around the police department. And they're like, all right, yeah, you can go in front. So then I'm in front of them and we go down and it's like everybody's like cheering and everything. And it's like me at the forefront with all the dads behind me, basically. And I'd say that's a pretty cool moment in it of itself, is to like be there and be on the other side. Because before then, all the other years, I was on the other sidelines watching, and it was almost strange to like be in that position.
And like he had never been on the inside, I've never been on the outside. I had dark sunglasses on because I was welling up like again, another proud moment. 2 short months after, a month and a half after we went through this whole episode, and we embraced. It seemed like for like 20 minutes afterwards, I was just so proud of, once again participating and kind of finishing this ceremonial ride. It was a great moment for myself, our family, the Bose team. It was great. It was I couldn't have been prouder.
This episode about Bose Tire Barn is so much more than just a Peloton and a group of people that come together to ride once a year. This group has truly become a family, and their families have become family, and they're a group that all year round, they spend their time talking and training and supporting each other, and we're so grateful for Bose Tire Barn for believing in Pelotonia since day one, and we look forward to celebrating them for every ride from here on out. We want to say thank you to our major funding partners who make everything in the Pelotonia world possible. So thank you to the Alberns Foundation, Huntington, the American Electric Power Foundation, and Peggy and Richard Santulli. Our community is capable of great things when they come together, whether it's for training or for fundraising. There's really no end to what building community looks like. And our friends from Bose Tire Barn certainly expressed that through their episode and the way that they described how their team was formed. So at the end of this episode and at every podcast, we're excited to share a really fun highlight of what we've seen happening in the community. So in the vein of building community and bringing people together, Olivia, who's our ride community coordinator, is going to share a little bit about an event that happens in our community that brings people together in a really fun way.
So we talk about bringing people together a lot, Jill. And we had this pleasure of meeting our friend Barry Chandler, who moved to Columbus from Ireland, pretty far move. And he saw these green arrows around town, and he wasn't sure what this was, but he was looking for a community to be a part of. He didn't have a lot of friends yet. He was just getting to know the area, but what better way to get involved than to find out what these arrows were and ultimately join us for his first ride. And he started to do something really creative with his fundraising efforts. So he brought his talents from Ireland to incorporate whiskey tastings.
And he's not just good at drinking whiskey. He's good at talking about whiskey and
singing songs about whiskey,
really giving this whole, Irishman experience. It's a ton of fun.
He has friends and family that will book him for these events. Now, corporate people have heard about these events and want him to come in. So he's really started to spread his talents all around.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a donation per person, right?
Yes.
And everybody gets a couple. He comes with his own glasses, and he brings whiskey and
presentation, music.
Yes, it's a really fun time. You learn about Ireland. You learn about how whiskey's made, and you get to have fun with the people around you.
Yeah, and one other fun fact about Barry, he actually met his wife through one of his whiskey tastings.
Really?
Yes.
Man, so we can say that Pelotonia and whiskey brought them together, right?
I think so.
I think we can take credit for that.
Let's do it.
Awesome. And Barry was able to raise enough money through his whiskey tastings to become a high roller, which means you commit to raise $5,000, which is just amazing. And he brought a lot of people together in the process, which is what we are all about.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much for sharing, Olivia. Let's keep listening for a preview of our next episode.
There's no way I can ever share my story with every young survivor in the world, right? Like I can never sit down and have coffee for an hour with everybody. But if I was going to sit down and share my story with these other young survivors, what would I tell them? How has this cancer impacted my life? And how can I provide some hope for these people maybe going through something really similar now, that this isn't the end, that for me, this was a beginning.
You've been listening to One Goal, a podcast from Pelotonia, hosted by me, Ride Community Manager Jill Ondino, with interview production and scheduling by Marketing Communications Manager Emily Smith. Produced, mixed, and sound designed at the studios of Wessler Media by Vince Tornero. Additional mastering by Joey Gerwin at Orange Judio. Special thank you to all of our guests for being so open and willing to share their stories. Please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as that will help others hear these empowering stories. If you're curious about joining the Pelotonia community and making an impact on cancer research, please see the link in the episode notes or visit pelotonia.org. That's pelotonia.org.